right, logical consistency. Up until now we've talked about logical equivalence, logical entailment, and now we're going to talk about another relationship between sentences called consistency. So quickly just to state the definition. A sentence psi is consistent with a set of sentences delta if and only if there's at least one truth assignment which satisfies all sentences in delta and satisfies psi. Okay, that's sometimes when you look at definitions it's hard to really understand it, so let's look at an example. And I'm going to set up two sentences, two simple sentences that we've dealt with before, P or Q and not P or not Q. I'm going to call that a set of sentences delta, and I'm going to consider two further sentences, psi 1 and psi 2. Psi 1 is P implies Q, and psi 2 is not P and not Q. Okay, we often, or in fact up until now, always have looked at the truth tables to try to understand sentences, and that's what we're going to do now. So I've created this truth table. I'm going to ask a couple of questions, maybe some more. The first question is psi 1 consistent with delta? And so looking at the definition, it reminds us that what we're looking for is where are all the cases, or it doesn't require all the cases, but what I want to look at is the cases where delta is, with the sentences in delta are satisfied, and that's case 2 and case 3. And then we want to ask ourselves, is there at least one of those cases that satisfies psi? And the answer is yes. That's why the truth table is so valuable. It's right there in front of us. So if you'll notice, case 3 fits the definition of consistency, where it says that all of the sentences in delta are satisfied. That's these two sentences, and also psi is satisfied. Case 2 does not fit that. However, it doesn't require that all the cases, just at least one truth assignment, not every truth assignment. Okay, so that's an important distinction to make. So the answer to that is yes. I'd say psi 1 is consistent with delta. Is psi 2 consistent with delta? Okay, so we look at the two cases where delta is, the sentences in delta are satisfied, and neither one of those cases is psi 2 satisfied. And so the answer to that question is no. We could ask a further question, though. Well, I mean, we could ask a lot of questions, but here's a further question I want to ask right now. Is psi 1 consistent with psi 2? That's interesting. And remember that what it requires is that there is at least one case where both of those sentences are satisfied. And there's a case right there, case 4. Now, there's no other case, but it doesn't require more than one. And so that is yes, psi 1 is consistent with psi 2. So, when it comes to logical consistency, using a truth table to determine if sentences are consistent with sets of sentences is a fairly straightforward activity. However, and you'll find out as we go through these activities, that trying to interpret consistency, especially the distinguishing the differences between equivalence, entailment, and consistency, that's something that is not quite as easy in some cases, and part of the reason for that is because sometimes we don't employ logic in our everyday thinking, and our everyday thinking leads us to conclude things incorrectly. So let me just give you an example here how that could easily happen. We concluded that psi 1 is consistent with delta, but psi 2 is not consistent with delta. So if you were thinking sloppily, you might say, oh, psi 1 is consistent with delta, psi 2 is not, so psi 1 and psi 2 must not be consistent with each other. That would be an easy kind of transitive property error to make in your thinking. And you can see that that's not the case. And so part of the purpose of logic is to clarify and structure thinking so that we don't make those kind of errors that sound to us like they could be correct. And if you say it that way, if you say, well, psi 1 is consistent with delta, but psi 2 is not consistent, therefore psi 1 is not consistent with psi 2, that it sounds compelling. It's just logically unsound. So that's one of the reasons why training students to think this way can help them.